The Soldiers of Ares. Chapter 7. Your, Maximus tried to say. Achilles, the man, completed with a slight nod. Maximus couldn't believe his eyes. But standing before him was one of the greatest warriors in history, Achilles. The hero of the Trojan War, the invulnerable warrior, killer of Hector, a true legend among men. "But you're supposed to be dead," Maximus said. "So I have heard. Can you walk?" he answered. Maximus nodded and got to his feet. And now that he got a good look at him, there was no mistaking it. It really was the great Achilles. Maximus had seen pictures of him before, even an old video of a fight of his during the Trojan War. Heck, his bunkmate in the army had a poster of him hanging on their room wall. This was definitely him. His hair was black and had the same almost military-style cut as Maximus. He didn't have a beard, but he did have stubble growing. Guess he didn't have time to shave between plotting to take on a military convoy or something. It wasn't hard to see that he was good-looking. His features looked like they were sculpted, and his body seemed like it was carved from metal. Maximus remembered a female soldier named Cindy once telling him what a pity it was that someone so handsome had to die in war. Well, I guess Cindy was wrong, Maximus thought. He was definitely still alive. He even had the scar above his right eye, the one he had got in his legendary fight to the death with Hector, which Achilles won, of course. And the armor, Maximus couldn't believe that he hadn't recognized it at first. It was almost as famous as Achilles himself. The armor of Styx, a legendary armor forged by the smith god Hephaestus, made from a rare black metal only found at the bottom of the powerful river called Styx that flowed in the underworld. It was said to invulnerable to almost any form of attack. Maximus was looking at a piece of history itself. Achilles walked up him and asked, "Are you all right?" To which Maximus nodded. "I apologize for breaking away from battle for a while, but I needed time to charge my attack," Achilles continued, "and in my tired state it took longer than expected." Maximus wanted to respond, but he was still a bit too awestruck to form eligible words, so he just nodded again. Achilles then walked over to Rex, who was still unconscious. "You might want to find a way to wake him up," Achilles said. "I don't think carrying him is an option. Then get out of here as fast as you can. The soldiers will be back with reinforcements." The transport was carrying a high-profile target. Maximus realized he was talking about the old man. He still didn't understand how he fitted into the picture or why he was a high-profile target. "So what are you planning to do?" Maximus asked, finally able to pull himself together. "I have to find him before the soldiers do." Maximus thought about this for a moment, and he came to the conclusion that he might be safer with Achilles than the soldiers. Then he said, Sir, Mr. Achilles, I think we can move together. The old man you're searching for is most probably with my friend the sprite." Achilles looked at Maximus. His expressions were still as stone-faced as ever. "Do you have any idea where they might be?" Even though they hadn't planned it, Maximus had a pretty good idea where Hector would be headed. "There's a cave not far from here. Its entrance is hard to find unless you know it's there, so it's safe from most animals and monsters. We sort of use it as our camp between long scavenger hunts." Achilles nodded at this and said, "And your name?" holding out his arm. Maximus realized that he still hadn't introduced himself. He shook his hand. "Maximus, sir. And that's Rex, by the way," he said, pointing to his still unconscious friend. Well, despite everything that happened to him, at least he could say he shook hands with Achilles. It took a while to get Rex back on his feet again, but some water from a nearby stream finally woke him up. When he got up, his first words were, "Are we dead?" Maximus responded with a grin and said no, but the manticore sure is. "How?" he managed to mutter, and Maximus just pointed at Achilles. "Who's that?" Rex asked. "Remember the hooded guy?" Maximus said, and Rex nodded. Maximus was about to say more, but Achilles cut him off. "If he can walk, then we should get moving." Maximus nodded and began leading the way with Rex closely at his shoulder. Achilles followed a few feet behind. After half an hour or so, Rex had finally regained whatever strength he could, and his head was feeling better too. When he was sure Achilles wasn't near enough to hear, he murmured to Maximus, "Now that I get a good look at him, he kind of looks like—" "He is," Maximus said. Rex let out a snort and said, "No, listen, the guy I'm thinking of is dead." "Well, he's not," Maximus replied. "That's him all right, with the scar and armor and everything." Rex turned back to look at the man again, this time more wide-eyed than before. "What makes you so sure?" Maximus merely shrugged his shoulders and said, "'Cause he told me." Maximus wasn't sure if Achilles had heard them or not, but even if he did, it didn't show it. After that, Rex fell silent. Maximus guessed that the new piece of information must have made his head hurt again. After all, he still couldn't believe it himself. After a few more minutes, they reached the entrance of the cave. And when they went inside, Hedger was waiting for them with the old man, just like Maximus had predicted. "You're alive," Hedger said with joy. "How the heck are you still alive?" Hedger started flying in circles around his friends. "Thank him," Maximus said towards Achilles. Hedger looked at the great warrior and said, "I don't get it. You guys got rescued by a male supermodel?" Of course, Hedger was never in the army, so he wasn't exactly familiar with what Achilles looked like, but Maximus was sure even he had heard of his name. "Hedger, that's Achilles," he said. It took a few seconds for Hedger to let what he had heard sink in. "Achilles," he said, "as in the Trojan War hero, Achilles." Maximus nodded, and he had never seen Hedger's mouth so wide open before. This was saying something, as he rarely shut his mouth. Maximus looked around the cave and saw that the old man was sitting in a corner mumbling to himself again. "What happened?" Maximus asked. "Yeah, he sort of went back to his factory settings after we got separated," Hedger said. "But he did say that he would speak sensibly again in another 11 hours and 45 minutes or something, right before he went cuckoo and started talking about tea cultivation methods." Achilles walked up to the old man. After seeing for himself what had happened, he turned to the other three for explanation. Maximus and Hedger explained the best they could about how they had found the old man and how he had turned normal for some time. At the end of their story, Achilles said, "You sprite, he said he would be normal again in 11 hours? Hedger nodded and said, "In 45 minutes. But that's all we know, Mr. Achilles, honest. We have no idea what's wrong with your grandpa." "My grandfather?" Achilles said, clearly not understanding that he meant it as a joke. Maximus was kind of glad he didn't. Hedger had an annoying habit of making jokes when he got nervous. And Maximus really didn't think this was the time. "I assure you that we are not related by blood, but I do owe a great deal to this man," Achilles said. "You might have heard of him. His name is Daedalus." All three of them had definitely heard the name before. Daedalus was considered to be one of the greatest inventors alive, and was known for having nearly 1,000 patents in his name. They said that his wisdom ranged into every topic imaginable, from physical mechanics to cellular biology to sports statistics. It was said that if you had used a piece of technology in your life, it probably had something Daedalus invented in it. "So that old man is Daedalus, the great inventor," Rex said, and Achilles nodded. "Great, and I called him Professor Crazypants," Hedger muttered. Achilles then sat on a rock and said, "It seems I will have to wait a few hours for some answers then, and I must thank you three for your help, even if at times it was unintentional." He was right about that. They had gone back to find him in order to stop him from attacking the convoy, and somewhere along the way they had all ended up in the same team. But now Maximus and the others were faced with a big question: what to do next? Maximus knew that their troubles weren't over just yet. They had attacked and helped rob a military convoy. One that had been carrying a high-level prisoner such as Daedalus just made it worse. It wasn't hard to figure out why Daedalus was taken prisoner. Mars has been at war with the country of Minerva for over 5 years now. Both Maximus and Rex had even fought against their soldiers, and Rex had even been on the front line. The land of Minerva was ruled by Empress Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Their capital city of Athens was also named after her. Even though her official title said Goddess of Wisdom, her strategic brilliance and powerful army had earned her another name as well, the Goddess of War. This name greatly annoyed Lord Ares. But the war between the two countries was contained at the front lines for now, so the trenches were not really affected. Also, the trenches were not exactly a place brimming with patriotism, as most of the people were outcasts there. Anyway, Daedalus was a resident of Athens, fitting as it was considered as the innovative capital of the world. He was also a known advisor to the Empress there. It didn't take a genius to figure out the amount of intel he could provide. But all this meant that the three of them were wanted fugitives by now. "So what's the plan?" Hedger finally asked. Rex thought about this for a while, then he said, "I think we should spend the night in the caves. For one thing, I'm in no shape to start crawling through the tunnels again. For another, by tomorrow we can be sure if the soldiers are searching for us." Maximus agreed. He knew that by now the soldiers who escaped would have reported back, and that the army would start searching for whoever attacked them. And, as always, the search would start at the trenches. A soldier, a minotaur without an arm, and a green sprite was not exactly a very common team-up, and they would be identified instantly. They had to be real careful while entering the city tomorrow. "So it's agreed, then we'll spend the night here," Rex said. Hedger began flying around trying to find a good place to hang his tail. "If you want us to leave, I would understand," Achilles said. "Not at all, sir. There are enough rocks here for all of us," Hedger said, and Maximus and Rex nodded in agreement. "There's no need to call me sir. Achilles is fine," he said, and there was even a very slight smile on his face. "Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm starving," Hedger said. We still got the apricots from the morning. Most got real squashed in the fight, but they are still edible, Rex said. And so they all enjoyed a dinner of squashed apricots and water from a nearby stream. Even Daedalus ate some between his mumbling. With this, it was time to turn in for the night. Achilles decided to take the first watch, which everyone was fine with. If he had wanted to kill them, he had plenty of other ways than in their sleep. And after the way he had saved them multiple times today, even after they tried to stop him, it was hard not to trust the guy. Maximus finally lay down on the most comfortable rock he could find, and in a few seconds he was sound asleep. This has been a chapter from Book 1 of the new World Odyssey series, The Soldiers of Ares. Links to the books in the bio. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next chapter.